Gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to the 8th Annual Capital City Black Film Festival, Harlem Lights Award. We are so honored to honor you, Mehcad Brooks extraordinaire. This is a special, really special year for us. And we have two awesome Austinites, heavyweights in the film industry, Julius Tennon, who is with JuVee Productions and who was our first Harlem Lights Award winner. Not only has Julius won the award, but he's been a great supporter. Mehcad, welcome to the family of Capital City Black Film Festival. We look forward to a long relationship.
That's right.
The Harlem Lights Award is named after the Harlem Lights Theater, which was East Austin icon from 1936, I believe, 1939 and 1973, when unfortunately it burned down. We named our award this because of what the Harlem Theater meant to so many Austinites. So with that, Mehcad, we are presenting you with this award in 2020. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Julius, thank you for being a part of this conversation.
Absolutely.
And I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here with everybody this evening to honor Mehcad Brooks with the Austin Lights Award. My name is Julius Tennon, President of Development and Production at JuVee Productions, a company I run with my wife, Viola Davis. And it's just really a pleasure to honor Mehcad Brooks with this award. You know, I just think that he's so deserving of this award, and we're just really excited to present him with this today. Mehcad, want to get to you. I want to, just say this is great, man. And even though you and I are both from different generations, we have a little bit of history. I just want to touch on it for a second. I think I met Mehcad when he was really young, but yeah. He didn't remember me. But his father and I played football together in high school, right. At Johnson High School. Right. And so we kind of have that shared history. And now we have this shared history of being artists, working in the arts, being actors. But Mehcad's really kind of had a really varied kind of career in terms of, with his activism. He was an all-state basketball player, and and then made the decision to kind of forego that and pursue. You decided to pursue your arts at USC here, the University of Southern California. And so that's the big commonality we have. And then Mehcad and I met very briefly, but we finally met because I ran into his father a couple of times to come back to Austin. He said, "You saw my son yet?" And I said, "Well, I know he's out there and I know he's doing a lot of big things, but we hadn't met each other." And we met each other at a premiere of True Blood, which Mehcad was starring on at that time. And that was the first time I got to meet Mehcad. And I followed his career, and it's just been absolutely wonderful and incredible to see what's happening, Mehcad, in your career. And, I want to know more about, your experience, Mehcad, in Austin that led you to getting started in the creative arts.
Oh, man. Well, first, I just want to say hello to you and thank you so much. And I remember all those times. And that premiere of True Blood, that was pretty amazing. I think I'd have to just give the credit to my mother, frankly. I was heavily into sports and academics at the time. And then my mother said, "Okay, well, we're gonna broaden your horizons around 15." And she put me into this East Austin program called Leadership Enrichment Arts Program. It's called LEAP. And it took kids who didn't really have access to the arts, took us to plays and took us to musicals and operas. And there was this theater arts camp that we had at UT one summer. And at the end of it, like our final was to write, produce, and act in a play. And you're talking to a bunch of 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, right? So nobody really wanted to do it except for me and my brother. So we went ahead and did that. And I remember just grabbing everybody's attention, you know, for 45 minutes to an hour and making people laugh. That was the thing that really caught me. It's like, you can change their mood if you hit them right, you know? And making them laugh was the biggest joy that I had. And then we brought some people to close to tears that night, in a good way. And we brought people and the applause. And I remember thinking to myself, even at 15 years old, that what I liked about sports was when the ball was in your hand, all eyes were on you. And what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about it? And I remember having the same feeling being on stage. I didn't think anything else in the world felt like that. And so that's how it started for me. I saw opera, and I saw a guy who was from Houston, Texas, who was singing that opera in Italian. And we went backstage to meet him, and I said, "You're from Houston?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, brother." I go, "But you're singing in Italian." He's like, "Yeah." I go, "Well, where do you live?" He goes, like, "Switzerland." I go, "That's possible." So just meeting people in the industry, or just doing something different than you know what we saw people in Austin growing up doing. And that was it for me. I was just like, okay, wow, my life can be a lot different than whatever I assumed or imagined it could be in academia or sports if I apply myself to the arts.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you know, this is that's awesome, man. That's really awesome. It's always inspiration points, right? That, you know, you see other people doing something and you know, you decide to do it. And, you know, obviously had a huge commitment to continue with your career and jumping into it. Well, you know, this year, this is the 8th year. You know, this is a virtual year this year for the festival. But this is the 8th year, and you know, and the festival over the years have faced, you know, challenges in terms of, you know, people wondering if there should even be a Black film festival in Austin, and why should there be a Black film? Why is it even necessary to do it? So I just wanted to ask you, Mehcad, why do you think something like this festival, the CCBFF, is so important to Austin?
Well, I mean, it's no secret that Black voices have been muted for quite some time in our country. It's no secret that Black voices in Austin have been muted or gentrified out of their own space. So it's important to understand the entire cultural context. Like so every culture is enriched by the textures of all the different races and all the different experiences that we have. But if you're only telling pieces of those stories, if you're not telling the entirety of that story, and you're leaving out Black and brown voices, and you're leaving out this voice, you're leaving out LGBTQ voices, you're leaving out these voices, then your storytelling and it becomes really compartmentalized. And you start to push out ideas into culture that are incorrect. Because the way that you and I see the world is very specific compared to somebody else across town in Austin, Texas, who grew up in Austin, Texas. Now, we might see the world similarly to how they see it now, but we grew up in a much different space than they did. And enriching those voices and respecting those voices, protecting those voices is important to where we go as a culture in the future. Not just in the arts, but I think that the arts leads the way sometimes in where our culture can go. And if we're not prioritizing minority voices, if we're not prioritizing Black voices in particular, who have so much to say, we've gotten over so much, we've persevered through so much, we've laughed through so much, we've cried through so much, we've danced and calculated our way through so much with patience and spirituality. We have a very unique voice throughout the world, not just in Austin, not just in America, but the Black voice, the American Black voice on the planet is completely unique. And so I think that's worth protecting, and that's worth highlighting for sure.
Absolutely.
What was I was talking about the.
Yeah, you were talking about, how things change for you and all of that. But listen, I mean, we can they can edit and all that. We can can we move along?
This, go
ahead, Mehcad. You want to do this? Go ahead.
You like this?
Okay.
Yeah, and so I remember my jobs at the time were like right out of college. The jobs that I had when I wasn't acting, I always had to have several jobs at a time, like we were talking about. And so I worked at a clothing store. I worked at ArcLight movie theater when it first opened up, and I was washing storefront windows. And washing the storefront windows was the job that I was able to keep throughout time, like throughout years and years and years, because you kind of made your own hours. Mm-hmm. And you were up at 5 o'clock in the morning washing windows. You're done at like 10 a.m. right? Mm-hmm. Mostly before the stores open. And I'll never forget this. I was at the premiere for Desperate Housewives, and we're in West Hollywood, and we're on the carpet, and reporters asking me a question, and I look up, and I see the company I used to work for, a guy in the shirt that I used to have, washing storefront windows across the street. And I looked at where I was and I realized I used to wash that window. Maybe at the time, it must have been about 10 months in between me being across that street, washing that window, to standing on this red carpet in a suit that Hugo Boss gave me.
Wow.
And I say that, with a great amount of humility in my heart, that your life can change if you work hard and you love what you do. Your life can change in a moment. Mm-hmm. And I saw my past and my present within this one moment of this reporter asking me a question, and I tilted my head and I was able to just take a look and see this guy behind him. And I pointed it out to him and said, "Hey, that used to be me." He's like, I was like, "No, really, that used to be me about 10 months ago." So, yes, I mean, yeah, to answer your question, like, that's what put it into perspective for me.
Yeah.
The moment that I was on that carpet, with a career for the first time, and able to pay my bills, able to, pay for the things I wanted, not having the same worries that I had less than a year ago, and actually laying eyes on the person who had taken my job.
Yeah.
And that put it into perspective for me, that anything's possible.
That's right, man. That's so good. That's a wonderful story. Hey, listen. Now, what was it like? What was it like for you? I mean, you've had all these varied roles and different things, but how was it? What was it like shooting one of your latest films that just got released, Mortal Kombat? What was that like?
It hasn't been released yet, thank goodness.
It hasn't been released yet. I know it's coming up. It's coming up soon, right, for release.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it had or not, if it was going to be on a streaming service first, or HBO Max, or because with the theaters being closed, it's kind of precarious with everything, right?
Well, the issue is it was supposed to come out January 15th of this year. I think.
Okay.
So they pushed that back for good reason. I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to say this, but I'm gonna go ahead and say this because I feel like we're amongst friends and family here. The studio really wants it to come out in theaters.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're gonna just hold until the theaters are up and running again, and as of now, that could be April, May, or could be June, July. But whenever the theaters are back when theaters are back up and running, that'll come out. Mortal Kombat, it's the biggest thing I've ever done at this point. So it is a dream come true. Like, I don't say that lightly. It's a dream come true. I was one of those kids who was a gamer, who was up all night playing Mortal Kombat, you know, with his friends until 5 o'clock in the morning, till the sun came up, and you know, I was playing with the character that I'm playing. So there's something really special about that, and there's something kind of interesting as well playing a video game character. So you have to play somebody who's grounded and real, but at the same time, you can believe that they are a video game character. So for instance, a point of reference is Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, right? Now, he's an outlandish character, right? But if you put him in the real world, there has to be a reason that he's that way. And so that was a really interesting character study for me, that here's this guy who, you know, is ex-special forces, who's out killing interdimensional ninjas and monsters. How did he get there? like, take that seriously for a second. How did he actually get there? And for me, that was a task. It was a lot of fun, and I gained 35 pounds. And
wow,
it's pretty amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really awesome. So listen, so you know, there's so much to you, my brother, than just being an actor. I mean, you're also a musician. Yeah. And I know that in your debut album, you talked about kind of that the release of that album was a reflection of the traumatic experiences kind of in your life. Can you kind of just touch on it a little bit about, you know, give me a little context to what when you were going there with that?
Yeah, so I call these traumatic interventions because they intervene in the process of your life to the point of where you have to pay attention to them, and you have to acknowledge them. And then, at least for me, they were pivot points in my life that caused me to live a different life, right? And so I'm very thankful for these experiences. The first time was May 20th, 2009. I was in the hospital. I'd been in the hospital for about a month, lost 1 pound a day. And no one was actually sure why until about 5 days before that. And they found out that I had a parasite. It was this amoebic antimicrobial parasite, a very fancy way of saying water-based parasite that I got in Africa. And it caused a liver abscess. And I won't get into the gross details about what a liver abscess is if you don't know, but you're dying. And if you don't get treatment, you will die. And I was a medical anomaly because I had it for 1.5 years. Now, most people with this parasite, if they didn't get medical attention within 3 to 6 months, they were done. I had it for 18 months. So right then and there, that's a miracle, and that shouldn't have happened, and I was very grateful for that. However, due to a lot of complications of what the hospital had put into my system and the IV drug drip that I was on, and then I had a allergic reaction to the parasite medication, my vitals crashed.
Wow. And
I had a near-death experience. And I still remember it. I still remember what it was like crossing over, the fear, but then which was replaced with bliss and harmony very quickly. It's kind of interesting. But I was also left with one conscious question. Did I do what I was supposed to do while I was here? And that conscious question is you could really sum that up by saying, did the soul fulfill the agreement that it made with the body while you were here? Right? So almost like the reason that you exist is because the soul and the body made an agreement. Did you focus on that? And deep down, I had this inner shame, and I was like, no, I didn't. Like, no matter what kind of success I had externally or what my life may have looked like to other people, I knew I hadn't fully embodied my purpose. And I went to what I thought was my death, ashamed. You know, I'm feeling like I had squandered so much time. And the funny thing is, like, I didn't regret anything that I had ever done. I regretted what I didn't do. I regretted what I didn't attempt. I regretted what I left to the side. I thought I had time. I pushed it away. Tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. And these things were very close to my heart and very close to my being. And I came to realize later that these things were the facets of my original agreement of why I chose to exist, right? No matter how you believe humans come from the nothingness to existence, I'm telling you that my experience was, I understood that there's an agreement that happens between the soul and the body. And that's why you incarnate with those parents, and why you incarnate at that time, and why you incarnate as that person. And I didn't explore that when I was in that hospital bed at 28. And then I came back. And I get into great detail about the whole experience in this book I'm writing, actually. But I won't today, because that's a whole fireside. Yeah. That's a complete, I mean, a
whole other thing.
Yeah, you got 3 hours?
Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can do that sometime.
Another time, for sure.
Yeah.
But I came back into my physical body, into my physical space under great pain. And that's really all I could think of. Great physical pain. That's all I could think of. And I don't know if you've ever been in prolonged pain, but all you're trying to do is get back to zero. Mm-hmm. You're just trying to get back to comfort, to peace. And I had to really find equanimity within my body, peace inside of my spirit, inside of my emotional state, inside of my psychological state, because I had none here, right? And I was able to find it. And time went on, I got better, and I healed up, I got better, and that was May 20th, 2009. And that was while I was shooting True Blood, actually. And I went back to work and, you know, left that show and did another show and did a movie over here. And time went on, and I went to India the next year, around the same time, May, and I was there for a month or so, and I ended up stumbling upon this individual called Nadi Reader. And Nadi Reader is somebody who is taught to read ancient scrolls. These scrolls that are written in Sanskrit or ancient Tamil, they're 5,000 years old. And sometimes you're lucky enough that they have your name on. And I was lucky enough, I was the one person in my group that this guy had my name on it. And he read me the scroll, and it was undeniable. It was me. It was my thoughts and my fears and my dreams and my beliefs, and talked about your past lives, talked about this entire life that you're experiencing now, and how this is a life of completion in certain ways. And I left with the top of my head just blown out. Like, what do you, this is crazy. And I looked at the calendar, and it was May 20th, 2009, exactly a year later to the day. And he'd also talked about my original agreement, my purpose of why I chose the agreement that I made, the soul made with the body to exist. And I was putting that off because I was just trying to heal from what happened the year before. And then time went on, and I kept working. I kept distracting myself. I kept working, kept being successful, but kept distracting myself. And then May 20th, 2011, I was minding my own business. I was shooting a show in Atlanta, and I had a day off, and I went to the mall to buy some cologne, and I'm at the stoplight, and the lady hits me going head on 65 miles an hour. Same day.
What?
Third year in a row, May 20th, 2011. And I went into a coma for 3 days. And it was very similar. It was a very similar experience to the other ones. Out-of-body experience, a lot of questions, more answers this time. It was more like I was kind of in control of the situation. And I got a lot of answers. And most of these questions and answers were around my original agreement, my purpose. So that was a tough one. I had to, I didn't tell people this until years later, but I went back to work and they were giving me scripts and everything. And I had to, you know how it is, they have insurance. So if you don't go back to work at a certain amount of time, that insurance kicks in and then they replace you.
That's right.
So I had about 10 days in between that coma and going back to work, and I was not ready. I was not ready. You know, I had a traumatic brain injury. I had, my head was swollen. It was crazy. I was having mood swings. It'll be in the book. But what happened was, I never forget this. They gave me the script, and I'm looking at the script, and I'm reading it, or I'm taking a look at it. And I look up and I start kind of like smiling and laughing and going like, okay. And no one's reacting. And I'm going, look back at it, look up again. No one sees anything wrong with it. Julius, when I tell you, I'm looking at this script and I'm seeing Wendigs, I'm seeing symbols. It might as well be Roman numerals or Chinese characters because I can't read. I can see some words that I recognize, like the, and but, and like 3-letter words and small, that, but everything else was jumbled. And I just sat there like, oh shit, how am I gonna do this? And so long story short, I struggled through that for a little while, about a week or so, in 2 weeks. And then the creator of the show called me and just said, are you okay? Because you never know your lines, you know? And it's getting to be like an issue. And so finally, like, you know, I remember I was, I just started crying on the phone and said, I can't read. I've lost the ability to read. I don't know what to do. And I was like, I can't, how am I supposed to tell you that? You're gonna fire me, you know? And to my surprise, what she did was she got somebody who was from the crew dedicated to helping me learn my lines. Dedicated, just that sat with me all the time, helping me learn my lines, helping me figure out what words were again. And I got a tutor, and I was about 6 to 8 months into it. I was up and reading again, and I was reading books. But that was May 20th, 2011. Wow. So, and then so I'm recovering from that. May 20th, 2012 was the first year I understood that this was a special day for me and that I should stay in the house. And I ended up meeting, through some friends, this kind of a spiritual guru from the Amazon jungle who just took me on this metaphysical sort of experience that I chose and wanted to induce upon myself, and it was sort of the completion of that.
And is that how your music, was that during the period of time when your music started coming in? How did the music wrap around these traumatic experiences?
my original agreement was to be a storyteller.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And music is part of that. So there's a voice I connect with now, and I don't, maybe that sounds strange to people, but go through what I went through and see if you care what people think.
Right.
Yeah. And that voice, gives me a little bit here and there, and it said, do the music. I was like, how? It actually said, do the music and move to New York. I go, how? And I'm not moving to New York. I live in Atlanta right now. I live in LA. Like, I have my infrastructure. I have my people. I have, everything set up the way that I like. Now I live in New York.
Right.
Because I just stopped asking questions, and I started to do the music. And, I put out about 30 songs, one album, and a bunch of different singles. And it's been really enriching. Some of the songs have been really, really successful, which is great. I've gotten them licensed on Supergirl and on the Blacklist, and it was the theme show of a German TV show. One of them was, which is great. And I was going to go on start doing live tours, and then the pandemic hit.
So here we are.
Well,
hey, that's an interesting journey. We got to sit down. We got to get together at some point, because I'd like to get the book, and I get to do that thing, but to actually be with you in person, so you could kind of give me a little bit more blow by blow about. It's very, very traumatic, but very interesting. You seem no worse for wear. You're fully here now. Praise God.
Yeah. I'm a much different person than I was, and I'd like to say much stronger and much better and a much more discerning person than I was.
Yeah. So Mehcad, you've been referred to as an activist, and more importantly, anti-racist, and I just kind of want to know what that means from your perspective. But also, on top of that, how important was it for you to assume that? To assume that activism role, that anti-racist role in your life, and kind of where did that come from? Did that come from your upbringing and that kind of thing? Give me a little snapshot.
It's the family business, right? Some people's parents are cooks and bakers, and some people's parents are, they work in the essential worker sector, and like a lot of people, follow in the footsteps of their families. And my father, my stepfather, who I consider to be my father,
right,
is a civil rights attorney.
I know very well.
You know very well. He speaks
very
well
well
to you.
Yes.
I'm gonna give him a ring after this. And
okay.
Very well respected civil rights attorney. He's argued in front of the Supreme Court. He's always fought for the rights of all people, all marginalized people,
That's right.
Who've been just dealt a heavy hand from the government and society. My mother's a journalist who's 3 times nominated for a Pulitzer. She's got a radio show now on KZI. Comes on Sundays at 12 o'clock. Nice little plug there.
Okay.
It's called, I think it's called In Color ATX. Excuse me, or ATX In Color. And she was always writing about, social justice. Mm-hmm. and closing these gaps of all these inequities that we have as a society. And that rubbed off on me. Like, I was at the dinner table. It was like being at the dinner table at my house growing up, my family's house growing up, was like being on the Senate floor. And you had to have your arguments in order. you had to have your perspective in order, and you had to have facts to back it up. And you could try to convince people across the table of your perspective, and it was just a very deliberative house in that regard. Mm-hmm. And I woke up with my dad, when I was 12 years old, and he would get woken up in the middle of the night, people calling because their child had gotten killed, or mm-hmm. that their father had been drugged behind a truck, James Byrd Jr.
That's right.
And I went out to Vidor, Texas, and I met the Byrd family, and I saw the evidence, and I saw, you know, the blood on the street, and I saw, you know, a lot of things that people in my generation weren't used to seeing, because my parents wanted me to see it early on and say, I'll never forget this. We were down in Vida, Texas, and my dad was showing us the crime scene where Mr. Byrd, James Byrd Jr. had lost his life. And he said, be very careful. This is what they do to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking to myself, like, I've grown up in a you know, pretty white neighborhood, going to, you know, pretty white schools my whole life, thinking like, no, not my friends.
Right, right.
And like, before I could even get that out, he was like, yes, your friends too.
So Mehcad, how important it is for you to assume the role, kind of being like, you know, a voice for the voiceless? You know, it's what we talk about in our mission statement. It's in our mission statement as JuVee Productions, of being a voice to the voiceless. So how does that, you know, when you're advocating for the voiceless, what does that mean to you?
I think I can sum that up in one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
We are here.
Mm-hmm.
Our voices have been muted for so long. We have been forced as a community to sit in relative silence, with sparks of our voices flying through, you know, after the Red Summer of 1919, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sparks of our voices flying through at Brown versus the Board of Education. Sparks of our voices pushing through the sociological din and the civil rights movement and
Mm-hmm.
civil rights legislation and the end of Jim Crow. 92 with LA riots.
Right.
Sparks of our voices pushing through. But we've really had to sit in relative silence for most of our existence in America. And silent is made up with the same letters as listen. So we've also been sitting there listening
Mm-hmm.
to the greater American culture for all this time. We've been sitting here observing all this time. And now that there are people that, I really believe that COVID reactivated the compassion centers for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to see somebody be killed on camera. It's one thing to read about it. It's one thing to hear about it. It's one thing to know it's happening. But I think when many white Americans who don't experience what that fight or flight is, what that fear is,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden they had a prolonged flight or fight experience because of COVID. They knew if they left their house, they were less safe for the first time in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
They knew if they didn't do things right and follow protocols, they were less safe for the first time in their lives. They knew the ancient brain got massaged, and all of a sudden, if they didn't do things right, if they stayed out too long, or they didn't take precautions and all these different things, that was life or death for them.
Right, right.
And then they saw George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what you do, no matter how you feel about things, fight or flight is the same in every human. So they recognized it in us when we saw George.
Mm-hmm.
They may have been sickened. They may have had more compassion than they normally would have, because they're sitting at home and they don't have much else to do, and they're watching this and it's, oh my goodness, and it's horrible. But they realize that we have to go through that time and time again, fight or flight, being safer in our own homes, having to follow a protocol not to be killed or not to risk our lives.
That's right.
And all of a sudden, they felt it.
Yeah, no, that's so profound, and you're absolutely right. You know, And this is kind of a question for you as it pertains to what we do. And I mean, it's kind of one of those struggles that I struggle with, running a production company in JuVee and being the black man, the only black man in the room, you know.
Many times.
Fighting a good fight, right? You know.
Many times.
Right?
Many times.
So what changes would you that you would like to see in the film and television industry as it relates to, you know, more opportunities for black people? And I think when you answer this, it's going to be a lot of the things that I think. But what are some of the things you think in this industry?
Well, I mean, I think we have to exhume a lot of the stories that, as you guys say, right? We have to exhume, you know, some of the slave narratives from their own voices. But we also have to exhume our ancestry. Who were we back in Africa?
That's right.
Who were we beyond the context of what white America thinks of African Americans as property, as slaves, as less than, as the essential worker? Who were we? Mm-hmm. Was my ancestor surprised because he was the chief when he was put in chains? Did he say, "Don't you know who I am?" in his own tongue? Who do you guys think you are? I want those stories too. I want stories of our ancestors prior to colonization. I also want to see stories that we can tell that are the mundane stories. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have been, Hollywood has really categorized us into certain archetypes.
Right.
And these archetypes, many times, are, we have to play them. We have to play them to get where we want to get. At least at first we do. And these, you know, whether it's a mammy archetype or the pimp archetype or the, you know, the soul brother archetype or the gangster archetype or the overly sexual archetype, whatever the case is, mm-hmm. That's how they have always written us, to dehumanize us and otherize us and exotify us, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Part of the reason that we're having a discussion whether or not your and my life matters is because of Hollywood ostracizing us, dehumanizing us, exotifying us, and otherizing us for a century. The biggest form of media that the world has, and propped up by the essentiality of the essential worker, of Black people, right? Let's just be honest, everything in this economy has a brick in it put there by our ancestors. Mm-hmm. So this business and this industry has been propped up by our ancestors. And then what do? They turn around, flip the camera on us and goes, murderers, rapists, right. Savages, beasts.
So then that goes to the point. Everything you're saying is all the things that I talk about. Mm-hmm. And that's why I knew there would be a huge commonality in that. And you know, and what I say to that is, and you would say this too, we have to be the change that we want to see, right? We have to be that change. We have to use that voice, exactly. Not to upset people, but to speak truth to power. And that's what's really important in this period, because it feels like the industry wants to do something because we're living in a global world, right? We're living in a global world where this content that we're participating in, that we're a part of, it can be everywhere now. Right. There's not really any limitations. So I wanna say I really appreciate everything that you said, and I know we could even talk about this for about another 2-3 hours. You know what I'm saying? On the real.
Definitely good.
But Mehcad, I wanna ask you one last question.
Okay.
What is next for Mehcad Brooks?
Mortal Kombat is coming out 2021. I think that's not sure how much I'm allowed to say, but I will say this. I think that film is gonna break some records. I've seen it. We were just shooting some reshoots and some additional photography for it, but mm-hmm. I have not seen that level of hand-to-hand combat in a superhero type movie ever. And it's really, really good. And it doesn't have to be. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it just has a big...
Because it's a franchise. It comes from a game already, so people know it. Right. But then to have a live action version of that, and as you said, for it to be that good, man, you got me excited
Hey,
about,
listen,
about getting to see it.
it's definitely worth checking out. And I'll say this, and I got a podcast that I just signed up to do. So I started a new podcast next year.
Okay.
I'm doing a documentary show. It's kind of like a daily show, but with long form media and documentary filmmakers.
Okay.
And I'm creating a television series now about that takes place centuries in the future, and but also deals with the summer of 2020 and how that turned out to be what historians then call the summer of change.
Well, Mehcad, listen, man, thank you so much, man. And congratulations on being this year's Harlem Lights Award
Thank you so much.
And man, it's so great to spend time with you, man, and kind of get to know you a little bit more, and continued success with everything. And I'm hoping, and I'm thinking about some things, because I got a lot of things going on, that I might be able to grab you for something that I'm producing down the road here, because we're doing a lot of great things, and you're doing a lot of great things. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the time, and congratulations again, my brother.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and it means the world to me to be recognized. Thank you so much.